everybody. Welcome to Pop Pop Fizzle.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Heidi.
And today we're going to talk about our favorite films of 2017. This is not necessarily a best of. We're not looking at films critically per se. We're just looking at our personal favorites for the year 2017.
When we were going through the list of movies that came out in 2017, I laughed because Jeff goes to more movies than I do. And so I said to him, putting together a list necessitates the idea that we actually went to the movies. So if I've left something out, or if he's left something out that you feel like is one of the greater ones, then definitely let us know. But we're going to go through what the films were that we actually saw.
That's right. So I wanted to kick off with a couple of honorable mentions because so many good movies, and like you said, I probably saw more than you did. So a lot of movies that I really liked that were just outside the scope of making my top five. Mm-hmm. I think for me, my top five, I didn't have a specific set of criteria in mind, but basically what I was thinking of was movies that I enjoyed, but also that I got something more out of than just a generic popcorn flick. There's nothing wrong with that. I love myself some MCU movies and some DCEU movies and comedies and thrillers and sometimes those movies can range from being cheesy fun to being gripping and well made, and so I'm all over the place with that. So if I can enjoy a cheesy movie and come away with it having just as good a time as seeing one of those really well made, more artsy films. So for me, it was about what had the most going for it in all of those senses. What did I enjoy seeing, but also get a little bit more out of? So some of my honorable mentions only missed out on the top five because maybe they weren't quite as all-encompassing as the five that I picked for me. Okay. And again, just my opinion. So if you have an opinion on the things that I put in my honorable mentions that didn't make my top five, be sure and comment below. Let us know what you thought or why you felt like something should have been included that we didn't include. Honorable mentions, like I said, a lot of comic book movies this year. So honorable mentions for me would be Spider-Man Homecoming, which I thoroughly enjoyed. That was definitely the Peter Parker and the Spider-Man that I've been hoping for a while. Wonder Woman was fantastic. I had a great time with that movie. I felt like the cinematography, everything Patty Jenkins brought as a director to that, it felt very empowering. It was a female hero, which is something we've needed, especially in sort of the comic book realm for a while. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't preachy. It wasn't over the top. It was what I find strong women to be anyway, just there, just strong, just being who they are, and not a hey, look at me, I'm a powerful woman, but just being a powerful woman, and not just in her physical strength, but who she was as a character, not being willing to back down when other people were afraid, and stepping into places, into no man's land where other people weren't willing to go. So Wonder Woman, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which kind of gets a bad rap for being a little bit too comedic, but I had a great time with it. Logan, I thought was it was the ultimate Wolverine film. Definitely Hugh Jackman at his best as that character. I thought Daphne Keane was fantastic as X-23, so that movie definitely an honorable mention. And then last but not least on the sort of comic book side of things was Thor Ragnarok. I haven't laughed at a comic book movie quite as much as I did at Thor Ragnarok. Chris Hemsworth is great with his comedic timing, pitting him against Mark Ruffalo and pitting Thor against the Hulk, and then Tom Hiddleston's always great. So just a good movie all around. Didn't quite make my top five, but still all of those super enjoyable. Before I move on to any more honorable mentions, did you have some?
I had a couple of honorable mentions. Just to say that my criteria for my favorites were actually very different from Jeff's. My favorites were, the biggest one for me is how much fun did I have watching it and how likely am I to watch it again. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of where I am with those movies. I go to movies and I watch movies to kind of get myself out of the everyday life and just kind of be in a different world altogether. And so
escapism.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
So is it something that I would watch again? Is it something fun? Is it something well made? So those are kind of my criteria. So my list very different from yours, and but I just have two that are kind of in my honorable mention. I actually had a short list when I was trying to pick my top 5 of about 15, but there are some on there that were just like, fun popcorn movies that I don't necessarily want to see again, but they were fun and I could at some point in time. But my 2 honorable mentions were It. I was really excited about it when it was getting ready to come out. I read the book when I was younger. I watched the miniseries when it came out, and so I was really excited to see what they would do with it, and I really loved it. And so that was one that was really great, and I'm really looking forward to the sequel that's going to be coming out. And then the other one was Baby Driver, which just was so much fun to watch, so much fun to listen to. The soundtrack rivaled the action. It was so good. And the fact that it was put together so well as far as where the musical cues landed, where the characters were doing certain things, it was just, I felt like it was a really great thing, and definitely worth a second watch, because you wanted to first time see it and see the movie, and then the second time just really see how well that was coordinated.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that I think is like an experience. So you kind of take it in one way the first time, and then you process it more, seeing it on repeated viewings. I worry a little bit with it that because of the allegations and stuff surrounding Kevin Spacey, that maybe people will shy away from it when they would really enjoy it if they could just get past that.
That's the thing. I was really worried about that cloud, but the thing is, overlook the cloud because the movie itself was great, and while he had a large part in it, he's not the main character, so
right.
You can kind of push that aside a little bit to
right.
enjoy the movie.
And you can say anything you want about the person, Kevin Spacey, but as far as his acting talent, that's never really been in question. He's a solid performer every time. So yeah, while I don't necessarily want to see him cast in anything going forward if these accusations are true, but I don't fault Baby Driver for hiring somebody of his caliber to be in your movie.
I mean, at that point in time, nobody knew. So
yeah. A few other honorable mentions I had. Some of them probably were ones that you didn't see. I know this first one was one that you didn't see. The Hitman's Bodyguard with Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. It was just a really fun action comedy. I liked it just because I always enjoy Ryan Reynolds when he's doing his snarky, funny thing. But Samuel L. Jackson is normally just Samuel L. Jackson, and I felt like in this we got a little bit of a different side to him, and I think he played off of Ryan Reynolds really well. Their chemistry worked really well. So it wasn't a great movie by any far stretch, but it was a fun movie, and so it made my honorable mentions. It also was in my honorable mentions. I thought it was a really well-made film, and I'm excited to see what they do for a follow-up. I backed off getting it on Blu-ray because I want to get both when they come out.
Of course, because that's what they do.
Yeah, and so that one was great. I love Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. I thought that was a fun film. And a surprise, I think a lot of people going into that felt like they didn't need another Jumanji movie. While being a fan of the original, it came out for me, I was a little bit older, so I don't have the history with it that probably people a little bit younger than I have with it. So it wasn't like a sacred cow that I didn't want to touch again. But I was kind of skeptical about whether or not we needed it. Loved the cast right from the start. And so that was what sold me enough to actually go to the movie. Mm-hmm. And then Heidi can attest that I went to see the movie, loved it, and then said, you've got to go with me and see it because I think you'll really think it's funny.
This is true.
So, Jumanji. And then one that's a little bit controversial was Star Wars The Last Jedi. I know some fans had some issues with it. I love the movie. I've seen it multiple times now. I think I can understand some of the arguments around it, and I can understand why certain elements of it may have disappointed certain longtime fans. I thought it was brilliantly made, and I think a lot of the problems that people have, if they would dig into the movie a little bit, the movie actually answered some of those things, but that's beside the point. It was one of my favorites. It just didn't quite make the top 5. And then one I saw really late, actually I saw it after the end of the year, but it came out in 2017, was The Post with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. Thought it was a great movie. Steven Spielberg movie, and they can be hit or miss for me. I do love Spielberg when he's really on his game. This did not feel like a Spielberg movie to me, but I really enjoyed it. And then last but not least, one that we both loved, that again we saw after the first of the year, was The Greatest Showman. I'm a sucker for a good musical. Maybe not as much as some other people are, but I do love it when they're good, and I really had a good time with The Greatest Showman. I thought the music was awesome. I thought the film itself was good. It might have been a little bit light on story, but I mean, that's not what I go to musicals for.
Right.
I immediately wanted the soundtrack though when I left the theater, so that for me was a big sell for that movie. And then I had one wild card, which was just like, people are going to think I'm crazy for throwing this out here, but I like this movie enough that I bought it on Blu-ray. And it came out earlier in the year. It was The Resurrection of Gavin Stone. And it was mainly because I like Brett Dalton from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I saw that he was going to be in a faith-based film, which struck me as being really odd. And so I wanted to see it because I really felt like it wouldn't be as cheesy as some of those movies tend to be. Because of his involvement in it, and I feel like I was justified in that. Like the acting might not have been up to big screen blockbuster sort of level, but I thought all the acting was fairly solid. I thought Brett Dalton was great in it, and I thought it avoided the overly preachy side of things and fell into a nice feel-good, heartwarming kind of story. And I thought it was really good. So I enjoyed that. So that was my wild card for that.
So as you can see, Jeff saw way more movies than I did already. But that's okay, because...
And that was before I had Movie Pass.
Yeah.
It'll be worse.
Movie Pass is not one of our sponsors.
Call us Movie Pass, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you jump in and give us your number 5?
So my number 5 was Thor Ragnarok. Again, like I said, my criteria is, did I have fun? Will I watch it again? Absolutely. I thought it was a great movie. I thought the visuals were great. I thought the acting was fun. I thought the comedic timing and comedy and just all of that was really well done. And it made me excited to see all the characters that I saw, and like all the MCU stuff, it just ties together really well, and it made me want to see more. So I'm very excited.
It's very different for a Thor movie. It felt very different, and yet it also nicely fit in following the things that we had seen in previous Thor films and in the Avengers.
Right. I mean, it's very different for a Thor movie, but still very in character for Thor. So it was a really nice, it wasn't necessarily a risk, but it was a really nice, fresh, lighter way to see Thor. So it was great.
Mm-hmm. My number 5 was M. Night Shyamalan's Split. I, along with many people, I was kind of unsure whether M. Night would ever get his mojo back, and I was so happy when I saw Split, because even without, and we won't give it away, but even without the sort of twist or turn there at the end that opens it up into a larger world, I would have enjoyed that movie just as it was. Had it not had that connection, had it not opened up that way at the end, I would have walked out of there extremely satisfied.
Yes.
And so for me, that was a win, and that was my number 5.
Okay. So my number 4 was on your honorable mention list, was Wonder Woman. Again, like Jeff said, it just really well shot. It was great to see a fresh take on Wonder Woman in the movies, in that she was a strong character, but also just a strong person. It was the World War I stuff was really interesting to see, and great that the characters weren't necessarily like trite. It was just a nice way to see them all together.
Yeah, her chemistry with Chris Pine I thought was really well done, and not overdone, not overcooked, not...
Yeah, they weren't trying so hard to put them together. It was a real sort of questionable relationship. Is she interested? He definitely was, but they weren't trying so hard to put it together. It was just kind of there. They were comrades, but also interested. So I like that.
My number 4 was a movie that Heidi has not seen, although that we'll remedy that soon. Much controversial choice, probably, but my number 4 is Mother. A lot of people went to Mother expecting one kind of movie, and they didn't get the movie that I think was sold to them with the trailers and the advertising, and that's a shame, because I think what Mother was was a really well done, well thought out film. It's a little bit of a deeper film. I think it's a film that if you go into expecting one thing and get something else, I can see why people would be disappointed. That wasn't my experience. Darren Aronofsky has done such beautiful work in previous films like Black Swan and The Fountain, and so I just kind of went in not knowing what to expect, and I think sort of having an open mind when I sat down there and kind of trying to pay attention and know that he was probably going for something deeper than what I was seeing on the surface made it impossible for me. And I was actually there with, I went with my oldest daughter, and I remember that as we were watching it, I would lean over and go, here's what I think is happening. And she would say, oh, I think this is this. And we would just kind of whisper back and forth to each other. And it was a really enjoyable experience for me. And it's one of those that I think I'll go back to and get probably more out of every time I watch it. Mm-hmm. So that was my number 4.
Okay. Well, I definitely do want to see that. Just knowing what the controversy was about, people expecting one thing and not getting it, and just seeing something completely different, but also knowing that there's more to see on a second or third viewing. That's definitely right up my alley. So my number 3 was on your top 5 now is Split. I really enjoyed that, and as Jeff said, it was a great movie all the way through, and even had the last 5-10 minutes not taken place, I would have had a fantastic time. I felt like the acting was just really well done, and the story was interesting, and it's not something that we've seen on the screen ever before. So it just exploring the topic of multiple personalities itself was interesting, and then just being able to see the performances.
James McAvoy's performance, especially the way he weaved in and out of all of that, was just
you really saw those characters. He really brought those characters to life. So it was just I felt like really well done.
Oh, hi, number 3 on my list. My number 3 is The Disaster Artist. If you're not familiar with The Disaster Artist, I'm not sure how wide a release it actually had. It is a movie that's based upon the person and character of Tommy Wiseau, who directed one of the worst films of all time, The Room. Now, He wrote it and directed it.
And starred
in it. And all of those lovely things. There are plenty of resources online for The Room, lots of reactions, lots of conversations happening about The Room. It's one of those movies that's so bad that it's easy to kind of love it. It's a very genuine film, and I think The Disaster Artist, for me, because it was kind of a look at the people that were involved in the making of that movie, a look at Tommy Wiseau, a look at the other people involved, Greg Sestero, and all of that. So it was a look at basically that it was a passion project for them, and it was something that they were trying to make into something good. It just didn't go that way, and I felt like The Disaster Artist had a lot of heart. I felt like it gave me a new appreciation for what they were going for with The Room, and it's still hilarious the way that it turned out. But The Disaster Artist kind of gave me a view that gave me a little more respect for at least the effort that went into it and the friendship behind it all. And so for me, The Disaster Artist was my number 3.
Okay, great. So my number 2 was The Greatest Showman. Like Jeff said, we saw it after 2017 passed, but it did come out in 2017. And I too am a sucker for great musicals. And I just love that this was just a brand new musical. It wasn't a rehash. It wasn't anything that was based on any particular story other than loosely based on P.T. Barnum and his life. So it was just great. And I love the idea, and I know that some people out there didn't, but I love that the music was modern, even though the trappings and the visuals were from the past. I felt like that was just kind of fun. I was a big fan of Moulin Rouge way back when, and still love it, and it's kind of the same sort of idea.
Yeah, it did have a lot of the same vibe, and I feel like sort of the music being more modern was sort of a nod to the fact that P.T. Barnum was kind of ahead of his time, that he saw how things were and wanted to push into some things that wouldn't necessarily be popular in the time that he lived in, because he was thinking ahead a little bit. And like everyone in real life, human beings are flawed, they have issues. It doesn't necessarily erase the good that they did, but I mean the musical itself, just the music and the way that it was delivered, and
I love that it was all original too. That was just brand new stuff, because in the times that we're in right now, a lot of things are remakes or they're sequels, and just the fact this was fresh and just brand new was really intriguing for me. I love that.
My number 2 is another movie that you haven't seen, although we need to correct that as well. Wind River, starring Hawkeye and the Scarlet Witch.
Oh.
Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen. Was a great movie. It was a movie that I kept hearing about, but I think when I saw the trailers for it, it just struck me as kind of a rental, or just sort of not a B movie necessarily, but just sort of a thriller that I wouldn't need to see on the big screen. And maybe that was true. I mean, maybe it didn't require a big screen viewing. I didn't see it until it was available in Redbox, but not a sponsor. But watching Wind River, it was such a subtle, well-written, well-delivered movie. I think Jeremy Renner probably gave the finest performance that I've seen him give. Very subtle. And it kept me invested, even though it wasn't a big, loud, action film. It didn't have all the typical tropes involved. It was just a really subtle, well-acted piece, and it surprised me how much I thought about it after I watched it. And that's kind of why it made its way so high into my list. It stayed with me for a while, and I just kept thinking, somebody Heidi needs to see this, Shelby needs to see this, other people in my life need to see this. I need to tell people, and so I have been telling people, see Wind River when you get a chance, because I just thought it was great. So see Wind River when you get a chance.
All right.
That was my number 2. So now we're to your number 1.
My number 1 was on your list as well. It was The Disaster Artist. I did not know anything about The Room until Jeff introduced me to it, and it is definitely one of the worst movies ever made, but it is so much fun, and it's more fun every time we see it, and it's more fun when we are able to show it to others and when we're able to discuss it with other people. It is a true cult classic, and so being able to see the making of this movie from the point of view of Greg Sestero, it was just really so interesting. It did definitely give me a new respect, a new insight into just all of the passion that went into it. Tommy wanted so badly to be famous, to be successful, and now in this time, because of its cult status and now because of The Disaster Artist, that actually came true, even if the movie was terrible. So I think my love of The Disaster Artist kind of is mixed with my love of The Room, so it's kind of hard to separate the two, but the thing is, the acting was so well done. I feel like the directing was great. I feel like everything about it was just spot on. So, and it is something I could watch again. So it's definitely there. It's my number 1.
You missed your opportunity when I had it at my number 3 to go, you're tearing me apart, Jeffrey.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected you to do that anyway. And you wouldn't want to give away your number 1 choice too early.
Nope.
My number 1 was one that Heidi mentioned earlier, which is Baby Driver. Baby Driver, by far, was the one movie from 2017 that I can see myself watching over and over and over again. I really honestly think I could have it on every day in the background of sort of what I was doing, and I would stop when certain scenes would come up to see them. I want to see that opening bank heist. I want to see the opening credits set to the music. I want to see certain scenes that fall within the course of the movie. And it's one of those that I keep, again, kind of similar to what I was saying about Wind River and some of these others, it's one of those films that I felt compelled to tell people to see. You need to see Baby Driver. You need to check out Baby Driver. If you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. And, I've been hit or miss with Edgar Wright's movies. Love Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Would have loved to have seen what he did with Ant-Man. Sadly, that didn't work out. But hit or miss with him. I love certain things. I like Shaun of the Dead. I liked Hot Fuzz. So I don't think I saw the third one in that particular trilogy of movies. But I just went into it not really knowing what to expect. other than I had heard good things, and I sat down and was just blown away. As Heidi mentioned, the soundtrack itself is great. It's a character in and of itself. The way that everything is timed with the music, that music embodies those characters and the characters embody the music, and it's just this wonderful melding of ideas and elements, and I can't imagine the kind of detail work that went into making that happen.
Yeah.
So for me, that's just one that I see myself never growing tired of, and I love it. So regardless of who may or may not be getting more work in Hollywood, I love that movie, and if you haven't seen Baby Driver, I think you should. So how do you feel about our top 5? Are we missing something? Would something not even make it into our honorable mentions that you thought should be ranked in there? If so, let us know in the comments. If you like this video, click that thumbs up button.
And if you want to see more from us, go ahead and subscribe to our channel.
That's right. And let your friends know. Pass the video around, share the wealth, and let people know that you're into pop culture as well. So we will be back another time with another list or a review or a trailer reaction, what have you. So stick around, subscribe, click that little bell so that you get a notification the next time we post something. Until next time,
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.